back to Coffeesodes, where we turn everyday moments into insightful learning sprees.
I like that.
I'm Josh.
I'm Kelly.
And this is our 42nd episode.
Wow.
As always, we're diving deep into some research you've sent our way.
Very exciting.
For those following along with the sources, you can find all the details in the episode description. Today, we're cracking open a topic that's both familiar and surprisingly complex. Canned fish. It's a pantry staple for many.
For sure.
But how much do we really know about what goes into those cans? I was surprised to learn from the research that canning seafood uses less energy than processing fresh or frozen options.
Yeah, less energy.
That immediately made me think about the environmental angle.
Yeah, for sure.
So is canned fish actually a sustainable choice?
Well, the research suggests that it can be.
Okay.
One of the biggest advantages of canning is that it significantly extends the shelf life of seafood, which helps reduce waste.
Okay, that makes sense.
And think about it, fresh fish needs to be transported and stored quickly under specific conditions.
Right.
All of which require energy.
Lots of energy.
Canned fish kind of bypasses a lot of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The research also pointed out that a good portion of canned fish comes from fisheries that try to minimize their environmental impact and bycatch.
Absolutely.
So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Speaking of scale, did you know that canned seafood makes up a whopping 11% of global fisheries production?
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a massive amount.
It really highlights how significant canned fish is as a food source worldwide.
Yeah, millions of people depend on it for protein.
And as the demand for convenient and sustainable options grows, this market is only going to expand.
Which makes me think, if so many people rely on canned fish, how does the industry ensure that the quality isn't compromised during canning?
While canning preserves the fish and makes it shelf stable, it does affect the taste, the texture, and even the nutritional content to some extent.
I've definitely noticed a difference in taste between canned fish and fresh fish. Sometimes it's saltier and the texture isn't quite the same.
That often comes down to the filling medium used in the canning process.
Okay.
Whether it's oil or brine or water or even tomato sauce, it all impacts the final product.
The research went into how these different filling mediums can actually change the levels of fatty acids and amino acids in the fish.
Oh, wow.
For example, oil-packed fish tends to retain more of those healthy omega-3s.
Right, but it can also be higher in calories and fat, which is something to consider.
True, so there are trade-offs.
It's about finding the right balance for your dietary needs.
I'm curious, do you have a personal preference when it comes to filling mediums?
Sometimes I go for oil-packed when I want a richer flavor, but other times I prefer the cleaner taste of fish packed in water or brine. It really depends on the recipe or how I'm planning to use it. What about you? Any favorites?
I usually just grab whatever's on sale. Now let's address the elephant in the room, safety. Is canned fish actually safe to eat?
It's a big question.
There's so many rumors and concerns floating around.
Understandably, people have questions.
The research focuses on some common concerns: histamine allergens and potential contaminants.
Right. Let's unpack those one by one.
Sounds good. Let's start with histamine. The research mentioned it can be an issue in some fish, but I don't really know what it is or why it's a concern.
Histamine is a natural compound found in certain fish species, and when levels get too high, it can cause food poisoning. However, one of the benefits of the canning process is that it helps control histamine levels.
Oh, that's reassuring.
Yeah,
Are there regulations in place to ensure those histamine levels are kept in check?
absolutely. There are strict regulations and safety protocols throughout the canning process to minimize the risk of histamine formation and ensure the final product is safe for consumption.
So we can breathe a sigh of relief on the histamine front?
Yeah, I think so.
What about allergens? I know some people with fish allergies find they can tolerate canned fish better than fresh fish. Is that safe?
It's definitely not a guarantee.
No.
While some people might have milder reactions to canned fish, it's still not safe for everyone with fish allergies.
Why is that? Doesn't the canning process destroy some of the allergens?
It can reduce some allergens, but not all of them.
Okay.
The research mentions a specific allergen called parvalbumin, which is a major culprit in fish allergies. Unfortunately, parvalbumin is highly heat stable, meaning it can withstand the high temperatures of the canning process.
So even though it's cooked, that particular allergen can still trigger a reaction in sensitive individuals.
Exactly.
That's important to keep in mind. What about other potential contaminants?
And there are a few key areas of concern that the research delves into.
Okay.
Bisphenols, toxic elements like mercury and lead and even microplastics. These are all things that can potentially make their way into canned fish during processing or packaging.
Microplastics in canned fish.
Yeah, it's a growing concern.
That's unsettling. Let's start with bisphenols.
Okay.
The research specifically mentioned BPA, which I know has been linked to some health issues.
Yes, BPA is a type of bisphenol that's used in some can linings. The concern is that it can leach into the food during processing and storage. There's been a lot of research on the potential health effects of BPA, and as a result, there are now much stricter regulations on its use in food packaging.
So is BPA-free packaging the norm now? What should listeners look for when they're shopping?
Many manufacturers have transitioned to BPA-free can linings, but it's always a good idea to check the label to be sure.
Okay.
And it's worth noting that even if a product is labeled BPA-free, it might contain other bisphenols like BPS, which are chemically similar to BPA and may have similar effects. More research is needed on the safety of these alternatives.
It seems like there's always something new to worry about.
It can feel that way sometimes.
So BPA-free is a good start, but we still need to be vigilant about other potential contaminants. What about heavy metals like mercury and lead? I know that's a concern with seafood in general.
It is. Mercury especially can accumulate in fish over time, and higher levels can be harmful to human health. The good news is that the research indicates that levels of toxic elements in canned fish are generally below the limits set by regulatory agencies. However, it's important to note that some studies have found exceptions where certain samples exceeded those limits.
That's a bit concerning. Are there any specific types of canned fish that are more prone to heavy metal contamination?
Larger predatory fish like tuna tend to have higher mercury levels than smaller fish like sardines. That's something to consider when choosing canned fish, especially for pregnant women and young children who are more vulnerable to the effects of mercury.
So while the overall picture seems okay, it's important to be aware of those variations and make informed choices.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about those microplastics. That's a relatively new concern, and I'm curious to know what the research has to say about it.
The research acknowledges that microplastics are a widespread problem and are present in most canned products, including fish. However, the good news is that the levels found in canned fish are generally low.
That's a relief, but still microplastics. It makes you wonder how much of this stuff we're consuming without even realizing it.
Exactly. It highlights the need for more research and monitoring in this area. We need to understand the potential long-term health effects of microplastic consumption and find ways to minimize their presence in our food supply.
This all makes me feel like being a mindful consumer is more important than ever. We need to be aware of the potential risks and make informed choices based on the information that's available.
I completely agree. Being an informed consumer means reading labels, carefully understanding the different types of fish and filling mediums, and being aware of the ongoing research and evolving regulations surrounding food safety and sustainability.
It sounds like there's a lot to keep in mind.
There is, but
it's definitely worth it for our health and the health of the planet. What else is there to know about making wise choices when it comes to canned fish?
You know, as we're talking about all of this, I can't help but wonder what the future holds for canned fish.
It is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? We've got this old school pantry staple that's suddenly becoming more relevant than ever.
Yeah.
As people seek out convenient, sustainable, and healthy options.
Exactly. So how does an industry built on tradition adapt to these modern demands? What's next for canned fish?
That's the million-dollar question. I'm imagining things like innovative packaging, maybe even new flavors and combinations we haven't seen before.
You're on the right track. The research actually highlighted some really interesting innovations that are already happening.
Oh, wow.
For example, some companies are adding things like algae extracts and plant-derived compounds to their canned fish.
It's like giving the fish a nutritional boost, right?
Right.
But beyond the health benefits, are there any other reasons companies are doing this?
There are several potential benefits. Some of these compounds act as natural preservatives, which could help extend the shelf life even further and reduce the need for artificial additives. Others might enhance the flavor or texture of the fish, making it more appealing to consumers.
That's fascinating. The research mentioned cinnamon oil extract being used as an alternative to vegetable oil in some canned fish. I wouldn't have guessed that cinnamon and fish would be a good pairing, but Maybe I should keep an open mind.
It might sound surprising, but cinnamon oil extract has some interesting properties.
Okay.
It not only adds flavor, but also has antimicrobial and antioxidant effects, which could contribute to both preservation and potential health benefits.
So it's a win-win. Better taste, longer shelf life, and maybe even some extra health perks. Give us a glimpse into the future of canned fish.
Imagine canned fish products that are tailored to specific dietary needs. We might see low-sodium options, gluten-free varieties, or even products specifically designed for athletes with higher protein content.
That would be amazing. I could definitely see myself reaching for a can of high-protein salmon after a workout. What else?
I think we'll see more experimentation with flavors and ingredients incorporating influences from different cultures and cuisines. Imagine a line of canned fish inspired by Mediterranean or Asian flavors.
That would be delicious. It would definitely add some excitement to my usual canned fish routine.
It's about taking a familiar product and making it fresh and relevant for today's consumers.
I'm all for that.
There are still some challenges to overcome with these new formulations, though.
Such as?
Well, taste is subjective. What might sound appealing to some might not be to everyone's liking.
Right.
Sensory acceptance is a big factor. Companies need to ensure that these innovations don't compromise the flavor profiles that people are used to.
That makes sense. You don't want to alienate your core customers by making drastic changes. Are there any other hurdles?
Introducing new ingredients always carries the risk of introducing new allergens.
Right.
Companies need to be very careful about this and conduct thorough testing to ensure that these new formulations are safe. The research highlighted that some companies are now providing very detailed information about where and how their fish was caught, even down to the specific fishing vessel and the date of capture.
Wow, that's impressive. That level of traceability is exactly what we need to see more of. It not only helps consumers make better choices, but it also holds companies accountable for their practices.
It also gives consumers a sense of connection to the product and the people who produced it. Knowing where your food comes from can make a big difference in how you value and appreciate it.
I completely agree. It's about moving away from that anonymous mass-produced food system and towards something that feels more personal and sustainable. I love that. It's about innovation that respects tradition while embracing new possibilities. It seems like the future of canned fish is bright.
I think so too. It's an industry with a long history, but it's also an industry that's constantly evolving and adapting to meet the needs of a modern world.
Well said. Before we wrap up our deep dive, I have one more question for you.
Go ahead.
We've covered a lot of ground, from sustainability to safety to innovation. But if you could distill it all down to one key message for our listeners, what would it be?
I would say canned fish is a valuable and versatile food source, but it's crucial to be an informed and conscious consumer. Pay attention to labels, ask questions, and support brands that align with your values.
I love that. Be informed, be conscious, and use your choices to shape the future of food.
I think it's time to distill all of this information into some actionable advice for our listeners.
I like that, actionable advice.
Yeah.
So what's the first thing you would recommend to our listeners who are, looking to make smarter choices about canned fish?
Don't be afraid to branch out. There's a whole world of canned fish beyond the usual tuna. Explore different species like sardines, mackerel, salmon, and even shellfish.
That's a great point. I tend to get stuck in a tuna rut myself. What are some of the benefits of diversifying our canned fish choices?
Well, for one thing, different types of fish offer different nutritional profiles. Some are higher in omega-3s, others are richer in certain vitamins and minerals. We've talked about filling mediums, but it's worth reiterating.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment with different options. Oil, brine, water, tomato sauce, they all impact the flavor and the nutritional profile of the fish. And remember those bioactive compounds we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
Some of those are added to the filling medium too.
Right, so those options might offer some extra nutritional benefits or flavor enhancements. But no matter what type of fish or filling medium you choose, always check those labels.
Always check the labels. Look at the ingredients list. Be mindful of added salt and preservatives. Some brands offer low-sodium options or use natural preservatives, which might be a better choice for your health. Transparency is key, and the more information a company is willing to provide, the better.
It shows that they have nothing to hide and that they value their customers' trust.
Exactly. And if you can't find the information you're looking for on the label, don't hesitate to reach out to the company directly, ask questions, and let them know what's important to you.
This has been such an eye-opening journey into the world of canned fish. Who knew there was so much to learn about those little cans?
So next time you reach for that can of tuna or sardines, take a moment to appreciate the journey it took to get to your plate. Think about the fishermen, the processors, the innovators who are all working to bring this valuable food source to our tables.
And remember that your choices matter. By being informed and conscious consumers, we can all contribute to a more sustainable, equitable, and delicious future for canned fish.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, happy learning and happy eating.